Hey everyone, this is Greg, episode 23 already of Unbreakable Spirits. And a couple things I wanted to talk about today. We have sort of a theme. Haven't talked to you for a few days, so I hope you guys are all well out there. It is a rainy weekend here in Pennsylvania. We can use the rain though. They say we have a drought, so um, it's going to be a weekend just to stay in and chill, watch sports, eat, and do podcasts. Um, Yesterday was a much nicer day. And yesterday I attended my first Phillies game of the year. And I wanted to talk about that real quick. Don't worry for people who don't watch sports. It's not about the game itself. It's just reflections about being there. You know, my first game of the year, I usually don't go so early in the year because it's chilly. Even though it was an afternoon game, it was a day game. Um, it was still a little chilly down there. So um, I usually wait until summertime, maybe around Father's Day, to go to my first ball game. But I had to go and see the Phillies and the Seattle Mariners. The Mariners don't come to town very often because they're from so far away. So wanted to go and see Seattle. I was thinking of a few things when I was at the game. Um, when I was a kid, my dad used to take me to the ball games. He was a big baseball fan, big Phillies fan. And even though the Phillies never won very much back then, there was always hope. And that was a theme, as we've talked about before. You need hope. You need things to look forward to in your life. You need a purpose in your life. And when you're sick, especially like I was, when I had all these fractures and broken bones as a kid, you really need something that'll keep you going, something to look forward to. And for me, it was baseball. Not only watching baseball on TV, but going to the games. Now, even though I was sort of a fragile little guy, um, you know, I still went to the game because I really was very determined. Fractures just happened with me, You don't plan a fracture. You unless you do something really stupid, like fall out of the wheelchair. But and they just happen. And with me, they could happen by sneezing, coughing, turning over in my sleep, uh, anytime, anywhere. And that's why my life was so unpredictable and so chaotic as a kid, and the lives around me, my parents, my family. Um, all it took was a snap, a broken bone, and the whole world went crazy. Everything was chaotic, So, but if I knew I had a ball game to go to, I was even more determined to go. And so we would go to at least one game a year. And what was cool about it was, back then, of course, in the 60s or so, we didn't have internet. We didn't have, you couldn't get the tickets on the phone. You had to literally either get the tickets through the mail or go down to the box office, Cottinette Stadium or Veterans Stadium in Philadelphia, and get the tickets in person. And I remember going down with my dad many an off season, like in February when it was cold out and snowy. And we would be down there on Lehigh Avenue in Philly at the box office and getting our tickets for the summer ahead. Again, things to look forward to, right? Things that keep you going. Whenever we would approach the stadium, I would see the light towers, the gigantic light towers. And that always was thrilling because you knew you were getting closer to heaven. You knew you were getting closer to the ballpark. And it's funny because the old stadium used to be in uh, in not Center City, Philadelphia, but within the city limits, in a neighborhood setting. And so there wasn't a lot of parking back then. No big parking lots like there are now. you had to literally park in the streets in front of people's houses. And I remember we used to park, and there would always be kids on every corner, like, you know, teenagers, that sort of thing, saying, "Hey, mister," to my dad, "Hey, mister, I'll watch your car for a quarter." Well, quarter was a lot of money. And so my dad would right away give him a quarter. So thanks a lot. And I remember asking him, "Dad, why did you give him a quarter? Just to watch the car?" And he said, "Well, if I don't give him a quarter, we might not have a car when we come out of the ball game, or at least maybe not tires, you know." Anyway, it was that sort of a thing, neighborhood, you know. But it was a lot of fun. And then we would go up to the stadium, and you'd see the hustle and bustle of the people going in. And back then in the 60s, guys wore like suits and hats to go into the ball game. You know, it wasn't like now where people wore jerseys and stuff. I don't remember people wearing too many jerseys back then. There were a lot of suits and white shirts, and guys smoked cigars, you know. It was just it was wild, but you could smell the aroma of hot dogs in the air, peanuts and popcorn. And you would go through the gates, and there was the ball field, all green, parrot green, and the big grandstand in front of you, the big scoreboard all lit up. And don't forget, you know, when we had baseball back then on TV, it was all black and white, no color TV until later in the 60s. So all the games were black and white. So to see the Phillies in their red and the visiting team, the Dodgers in their blue was really cool. That was the first game I ever went to, Phillies Dodgers, on Sunday afternoon in May, a beautiful warm day. And that the first thing that struck me was there was the field. You could smell the grass and the color all around you. It was just unbelievable. And just give me a hot dog and a box of popcorn, and I was in heaven, man. I was in heaven. So I think of my dad a lot when I go to the ball game now, you know, because that's how I started out. My dad taught me to love baseball, and at home we would sit and watch the games together. And so, you know, when the Phillies finally won a World Series back in 1980, I was thinking of my dad because, you know, said, "Well, Dad, I know you're up there watching, but man, you would be happy if you were here today, you know." So I still think of him when I go to the games like I did yesterday. The what I think about now too, when I go to the ball games, is how crazy it was a couple years ago. You know, the pandemic. Wasn't that crazy? That was sad. Very sad. Think about it. How surreal was that? Life itself was surreal, how we were all locked down in houses. And we couldn't go out in the grocery stores, or the shelves were barren. It was just unreal when you think about it now. And so was baseball and all sports. Think about it. They had cardboard cutouts of fans in the stands, 40,000 cardboards of Phillies fans in Citizens Bank Park. And at the time, it was weird. And at the time, now it seems even weirder, doesn't it? I mean, you would hear the crack of the bat on TV, no cheering. They had to pipe in sounds of the crowd and cheering. And it was just really unbelievable when you think about it. When you think about it, how different that was, you know? We're lucky to be here, you know? We've gone through a lot together. Just to be here, very lucky and blessed. But when I think about baseball, it was just so strange. It just, the pandemic affected everything, right? Well, now when I go into the game, I don't take it for granted anymore. Not that I did before, but even more so now. I don't take it for granted, because it wasn't so long ago that we couldn't go to the games. And it was scary, because who knew if we would ever be able to go back to things like baseball and Uh, things changed. So anyway, it was a great day. Got my hot dog. Did not get cut for Houston. Child died a little bit here. And it was just a fun time. Phillies won 1-0, sent those Mariners home, and it was a fun time. It was really a fun time. So I have a lot of great memories from going to ball games in the past and nowadays too. Um, the other thing I wanted to mention, when I used to go to games in the past with my dad or my brothers, was how inaccessible it used to be for a guy in a wheelchair like myself. Back in the old stadiums, the old venues, the arenas, they weren't accessible to people with disabilities. A lot of steps. Where you sat often was way in the back. When people stood up to cheer, you couldn't see a thing. People with disabilities really were second-class people back then. Um, and it really did change for the better until after the ADA was passed in the early 90s, and it was required that venues like sports stadiums and arenas had to be accessible for people with disabilities. I will say though, late in the 70s, the Phillies, to their credit, were one of the teams, I don't know about the other teams, who started to move that way. There were special sections on the concourse that were designated for so-called handicap seating. So you could stay in your wheelchair, you could watch the game, you couldn't always see everything because people could still stand in front of you. But at least it was something. It was moving in the right direction, and there were more ramps to get into the stadium to get where you needed to go. The bathrooms were more accessible. So things were getting better. Nowadays, almost every venue now is pretty much accessible. There's still some are better than others. I'll say here in Philadelphia, the Phillies Stadium, Citizens Bank Park, is about the best as far as accessibility is concerned. The Eagles Lincoln Financial Field is okay, but not as good as Citizens Bank Park. The Wells Fargo Center, where the Sixers and Flyers play, is pretty good too. They just redid their accessible seating locations, and they're pretty nice. But still, your people in wheelchairs are designated to sit in certain spots. Like very rarely can someone in a wheelchair sit down close to the action. So depends where you go, But things are a lot better, 100% better than they were when I was growing up as a kid. So accessibility is something that keeps evolving over time, and hopefully keeps getting better. And hopefully there'll be more locations for people, not only in wheelchairs, but older people with canes and walkers, so I always love going to the game. Now this year, it's only April. I still have 8 or 9 more games left to go, tickets, all through the summer. So that's good. Again, something to look forward to. Purpose, right? So that's one thing that hasn't changed. In my 60s, I still love baseball, going to baseball games. Just like I did when I was a kid, when I was 8 years old. I do have to be careful though. I will say this, because of brittle bones, I don't fracture as much as I used to, but I'm very leery of cracks, because, going into a crowd, you don't want to buck the traffic. I actually I have a few rules that I keep to myself uh, for my own personal use about crowds. One thing I've learned is that uh, people nowadays, they don't mean to run into you, but a lot of times people just don't look where they're going. They're walking, or maybe they're talking on the phone and they're not, they're preoccupied. Or they turn around. That's probably the worst because you see somebody, who has their back to you, and all of a sudden they turn around and start walking. So a lot of times when I'm at a ball game or concert or something, I do hold my breath, especially leaving. I mean, going in isn't bad because people are usually going the same way. That's some people who come early, late, but generally at the end of the ball game, everybody rushes out at the same time. What I found that kind of works is get out the nearest exit as soon as you can. There were a time when we would leave the game early, and I hate to leave the game. So many things, no matter what the sport, can happen at the end. And a lot of times I'm really glad I didn't leave early because I would have missed the big comeback and a big home run, whatever the case may be. But there were times where, you know, you almost have to leave early, not only to beat the traffic, but beat the crowd. Beat the crowd. That in my case, that's even uh, more of a problem than the traffic. So what we try to do is we try to leave as soon as the game ends, get out of the section, go to the nearest exit, whether it be right across the ramp there, right across the concourse. Don't go all the way down the concourse and come in the way you leave, the way you come in. Get out. And the reason is because when you're inside the stadium, people are milling around. They're trying to get out of the stadium. They may be drunk at that point. Who knows, right? So there are people cutting across, sometimes people are going this way toward you, like head-on collision. It's just scary for me. And all it takes is one bump, and that would be a fracture. So, but I don't let that worry me. I don't. At one time, maybe I did and said it's not worth it, but I want to try to live life to the fullest. I want to do things that other people can do. There are things that I can't do, and I'm realistic about that. But I want to go as long as I'm able to. I want to go to ball games and concerts and things like that. Unless it comes to the point where I have to stay home. When I was a kid, too many times I had to stay home, and now that I'm relatively healthy, I want to go. So I try not to let that bother me, but that's probably the one anxious part of the whole event is leaving the stadium. So once we're out of the stadium, we can walk around, and there's usually less people outside of the stadium. Get to the parking lot, right? So that's a little tip. Just get out to the nearest exit as fast as you can go. And I'm always keeping a heads up. If I'm with somebody, more than one person, it's good to have a bodyguard in front. So that, excuse me, sort of like parting the Red Sea, like Moses, excuse me. So if you have a body, I hate to say bodyguard, but if you have someone who is in front running traffic down, they will part the Red Sea for you. That's good to have. So, but I'm not going to let that stop me. I'm not going to let that keep me home. As far as the risk or the possibility of fracturing, I'm not going to do it. So I use common sense, but I still want to live life to the fullest instead. Last thing I want to do is So we're keeping on the baseball theme here. The movie of the day, I'm gonna try to do this every time I talk to you guys. Recommend the movie, talk about the movie a little bit. Maybe you can check it out too. A lot of my movies are kind of old, and maybe you have seen it, maybe you haven't. If you have, maybe you want to check it out again. Just like hearing an old song again, sounds so good when you hear it again. That's the way movies are. You haven't seen a movie for 10 years, you watch it again, it seems like it's brand new again. It brings back a lot of memories. So the movie today is The Natural. Robert Redford, there he is. One of my favorite, not only baseball movies, but sports movies too. And Robert Redford, I think, does a great job in The Natural. And he looked like a baseball player, the way he moves, the way he swings the bat. And I just want to read some glasses because I'm old. Real quick, if you've never seen The Natural before, it says nominated for 4 Academy Awards, including Best Supporting Actress, Best Cinematography. But in 1984, can you believe that? It's been like 39 years since they made The Natural. He's considered by many to be one of the greatest sports films of all time. The Natural is an inspiring tale of determination and redemption from acclaimed director Barry Levinson, featuring an all-star cast including Robert Redford, Robert Duvall, Glenn Close, Kim Basinger. The Natural follows the epic journey of Roy Hobbs, a once promising ball player on his way to stardom in the big leagues. Hobbs finds his dreams shattered when a mysterious woman and a silver bullet end his career prematurely. 16 years later, Hobbs, armed with his childhood bat Wonder Boy, finds himself coming back to baseball, joining the roster of the lowly New York Mets. Can Hobbs overcome the physical pain and nefarious forces around him to lead the Knights to the pennant? It's a great movie because it's almost like a fairy tale. You know, I love the old-time feel of it, the old-time 1930s, 1940-ish feel. You know, the Knights, of course, are a fictional team, but it just is a pretty cool story. Some critics, you know, critics, everybody's got the right taste, right? I don't worry about the critics. I go and see the movie if I want to see the movie, right? So some critics may think it's too sentimental, bushy, schmaltzy, whatever. But I thought The Natural was a good movie. Robert Redford, I think, is a very underrated actor. You know, of course, he's a good-looking guy. He's in his 80s now, still a good-looking, charming guy. Doesn't act anymore. He's retired. But think about all the movies Redford did. Great movies, you know. Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid, and The Sting, All the President's Men. There was a movie he did called The Candidate, where he played the role of the guy running for Senate in California. Great movie. Sort of like a tells you what it's like to be a candidate, you know. And it's just he's done so many great roles over the years, Robert Redford. And so I still like his movies. Glenn Close in this is just she's so beautiful. And what I would say is she illuminates, you know. They may have done something with the cameras or the lighting, you know, but she sort of glows in this movie. I mean, literally glows. And she's so pretty. And there's so many great character actors in this movie. Robert Duvall plays kind of the evil sports writer. And I saw Robert Duvall live one time. I think I told you I was at the Mike Douglas show back in 1977, I believe. And that's when I met the great John Ritter after the show. Well, on the bill that day was Robert Duvall. And Robert Duvall was known as an actor back then, of course, but I didn't know who he was, really. I saw him I've heard of his name, but I didn't really watch many of his movies. But he was one of the people there live, Robert Duvall. I didn't get a chance to meet him, but and Darren McGavin is in The Natural. Now you'll know Darren McGavin not only from that vampire TV series Kolchak, remember Kolchak back in the 70s, but Darren McGavin was the dad in The Christmas Story, Fragile, and he was great in that movie. Darren McGavin was just great. The old man. Well, he's in this movie, and Wilford Brimley, the old guy who played in a lot of movies. You will know who he is when you see him. He plays Pops the manager. And all he wants is to win the pennant one time. There's a lot of cool things like hitting the cover off the ball, and it's just like they describe it. It's a fable. It's like a fairy tale. So if you haven't seen The Natural, or if you haven't seen it for a while, look it up. Especially down during baseball season, you don't really even have to like baseball because there's not too much about the game itself. There's a lot of drama outside of the game. You know, there's romance and there's all kinds of stuff going on. So it's really a cool movie, The Natural. Okay, well, I think that's it. Like I said, it's going to be a rainy weekend here in Pennsylvania, and I think I'm just going to hunker down and maybe get some hot chocolate. Maybe I will get that popcorn that I bypassed at the ball game, and watch some baseball myself this weekend. The Phillies are down in Houston, revenge, playing the Astros. So maybe they'll get their revenge for what happened in the World Series last year. So whatever you guys do, have a good weekend there. I'll probably try to do another episode either Saturday or Sunday morning, sports edition, wrapping up the sports week. And I look forward to doing another episode of Unbreakable Spirits soon. So thanks for tuning in. Please tell your friends about Unbreakable Spirits. We always have a good time chatting, you know, but always love hearing from the people on Twitter who said they found the episodes and they enjoy them. And thanks a lot. Thank you very much for watching the episodes. I hope it brings you hope and inspiration. That's why we're here. So share a little kindness and a little hope with everybody out there. And please take care, be well till I see you again. Take care for now. Bye-bye.